Mayan civilization is a fascinating thing. It once spanned the areas that now make up southeastern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and the western portions of Honduras and El Salvador. This great era lasted from almost 8000 BC to 1697, when the last Mayan citadel fell. But what was life actually like for the Mayan people, both great and small? The Mayan Elite. As with many civilizations across history, the Mayans had a class system. It's important to understand how they lived and how their living conditions differed from the more regular Mayan citizens. The Mayan elite were made up of the royal family of the city-states that comprised the empire and their nobility. The elite maintained their privileges through specific family lineages, whilst the royals ensured their legitimacy by building up godlike personas around themselves and through the building of temples and pyramids. A great example of this would be the Tikal Temple, which was built during the reign of Yikin Chan Ka'awi'il. A further differentiation between the elite and the common people would be in the way their houses were built. Whilst the common people would live in small mud or reed homes, the elite would have homes built from stone. The most elite of families would live in large stone complexes that we would associate with palaces. Their homes would be decorated with intriguing paintings depicting ancestors or past kings. A great example of this can be found in the palace complex at Palenque in southern Mexico. At this time, which dates from roughly 721 AD, there is a central courtyard with rooms surrounding it. There is also a 25-meter high tower which would have allowed nobles to look upon the sprawling city below. Research has also shown that elite residences were places where the crucial operations of court politics unfolded through the meeting of political gatherings, artistic production, and displays of power. In order to keep all their wealth and power, aside from building fantastic palaces and structures, the elite, especially the kings, had to be brilliant military leaders. To prove themselves, they were expected to lead raids against enemy city-states. Much like Scottish kings from the early Middle Ages, the pressure on the kings didn't stop there. They had to be smart and quick-thinking in order to solve whatever problem their kingdom might face. Aside from being a genius militarily and politically, kings were expected to be incredibly devout. To preserve their legitimacy, the kings had to lead the people in praying and praising the gods, and they did this through very public displays of rituals, including street processions and blood sacrifices. Unlike what you might have heard or read before, the blood sacrifices were the private business of the king and only involved them and their wives. The common people. Below the royals and the nobility, there were the commoners, who were the largest group in Mayan society. Their daily life depended on their profession, as it were. Mayan civilization was heavily reliant on agriculture for food and trade, thus ensuring that many Mayans who weren't born into the elite ended up as farmers during the growing season. After the growing season finished, many of the Mayans would become builders and work on the incredible cities the Mayans built. Those who worked as farmers were often able to provide their families with food from their own work, and the surplus that was left was what provided food for the rest. Women were expected to work in their homes, be it cooking the meals or raising the children or weaving clothes for their families to wear or to sell. Men and boys were expected to go off and tend the fields and ensure the Mayan food chain continued. Parts of this chain included maize, corn, beans, and squash, alongside some of the more intriguing variants of chili peppers, avocados, and papayas, and that absolute delicacy, garlic. Aside from those who worked as farmers, there were the Memba Uinikum, who worked as porters, limestone quarriers to the noble class. Those who worked as farmers would by necessity start in the early hours of the morning, which made for some interesting conversations given that the family all slept together in one room on reed mats. Breakfast was made up of porridge called saka that was made from cornmeal and was mixed with water and chilies or honey, certainly a great way to wake up in the morning. Whilst they were out at work, the boys would eat dumplings consisting of corn and vegetables and meat. For dinner, the whole family would get together and have tortillas with vegetables and meat or fish. Following dinner, everyone would settle down once more to sleep. Work was not the only thing the Mayans did, though. Every month, religious festivals took place within the city or cities, and everyone attended and sang, danced, and worshipped the gods. Part of the fun involved people watching and taking part in pakatak, a ball game that the Mayans had inherited from the Olmecs. The game, which consisted of a 10-pound rubber ball and teams of 1 to 4 people, involved keeping a ball in motion and passing over a line like volleyball. The players could not use their hands and had to hit the ball off their chest or hips. The game was absolutely brutal. Accounts exist of players ending up getting badly hurt during the game. Shared traits. Of course, as with any civilization, both the elites and the common people had traits and interests that they shared. This included practicing head binding. The Mayans considered elongated skulls, flattened foreheads, and slightly crossed eyes to be the height of beauty. To the Mayans, this appearance resembled an ear of corn, from which they believed humanity had been created. They had a few methods of achieving this. To start with, they would bind an infant's rather malleable skull between 2 planks of wood for a long period of time. A slightly less painful shared trait was their hairstyles. Both men and women of all classes grew their thick black hair long, and usually they wore it up and pulled back tightly into a ponytail to emphasize the length of their foreheads. The men may have also shaved the hair on the sides of their head, but would definitely have left a long streak of hair down the middle. Men may have also burned their hair at the hairline to give the appearance of an even more drastic receding hairline, whilst women wore their hair in braids, sometimes interwoven with ribbon. For both the elites and the common folk, there was a shared ritual to mark a child's important milestones. For boys, turning 5 saw them have a white bead woven into their hair, whilst for girls, a red shell was given to them and was worn on their waist. Why were these items so important? Well, the Mayans believed that there were items of purity and therefore shouldn't be removed until the boy or girl had taken part in a ceremony that would mark the end of childhood and the start of their ascent into adulthood. These ceremonies happened when the boys were 14 and the girls were 12. The Mayans were also quite obsessed with using jewelry to enhance their beauty. Paintings and sculptures have shown both women and men with holes in their front teeth which have been inlaid with jade, pyrite, hematite, or turquoise. They can be considered the pioneers of the grill. One small difference, though, was that the elite class wore elaborate headdresses consisting of animal skins, jade, and other precious materials. Outside of their appearance, the Mayans were incredibly hygienic people who bathed often. They washed their hands and mouths after eating, how relevant given today's COVID world, and would often take cold water and steam baths before religious ceremonies. When it came to illnesses, they believed that disease was a problem with the spirit. They would bleed different parts of the body to cleanse the body of the illness. They also had several herb cures for ailments. One such notable cure was the use of tobacco to cure asthma. Life for the Mayans was an interesting mix. If you were part of the elite, your days could be spent politicking and trying to gain influence with the king or queen. If you were part of the common class, you were more than likely going to spend most of your life working away in the fields trying to produce something to keep society going. There were times when fun could be had, and they certainly seemed like they could be quite fascinating. With much of their world remaining underground, who knows what more we could discover? And though the great Maya Empire may have ended, the Maya themselves haven't disappeared. Roughly 40% of the 14 million people who make up Guatemala's population are Maya, whilst the Yucatan Peninsula and parts of southern Mexico are home to many more of the Maya. Their traditions thrive to this day. Do you know anything else about how the Maya lived? Let us know in the comments.